What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. It's time again for another episode of Banlist Roulette. Ever wonder how Konami makes some of the most puzzling and perplexing changes to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Ban list? Well, here we have their proven patented method, and we're gonna go ahead and spin the wheel to see where we can expect to see some cards ending up on the brand new March Forbidden list. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. The first card up on the chopping block is True King of all Calamities. There has been an outcry for this card to be banned for several formats now because it's so degenerate, it's so unhealthy, it doesn't promote interactivity in the slightest, and when one of the best decks in the format of the past several months can make this with ease, turbo it out, and sometimes make multiple in the same turn because yeah, that seems fun, then yeah, I think it's definitely time that this card goes. So let's go ahead and see where True King of all Calamities ends up. Oh, and True King of all Calamities isn't going anywhere. You know, I gotta be honest, I could totally see True King of all Calamities surviving another ban list just so Konami can milk every last cent out of Phantom Rage, and then maybe they'll ban it in the summer. Next up is Cyber Angel BENTEN. Out of all of the cards in the Drytron deck, BENTEN has been garnering the most attention, and for obvious reasons. This card is so highly abusable in the deck, you can use its effect multiple times to just get unlimited searches. The card is ridiculous, it's nuts. I don't think they're going to do much to this card this time around because they still need to sell Lightning Overdrive, and so if they massacre this deck now, it's going to affect the sales of that deck in the future, so I think this card is going to survive, but I wouldn't mind seeing a hit to it, and I think a lot of people would be okay with that as well. So where's BENTEN gonna end up? Who knows? Let's spin the wheel and find out. Alright, a limitation on Cyber Angel BENTEN. Honestly, I think this is probably the best, most logical solution that could happen. Will that be the case, however? Who knows? It's Konami. Next up is a card that a lot of people may have forgotten about, but that's Red Eye's Dark Dragoon. Remember, on the last ban list, Dragoon actually managed to skirt by without getting hit whatsoever, and that's a really big deal because a lot of people thought it was the apocalypse and Dragoon was going to run rampant. Now, that didn't come to fruition. Dragoon is played in a myriad of decks, but it's nowhere near the best, meta-defining threat that we thought it was going to be. It actually bolsters a lot of these rogue decks into contention and makes them viable, and so some people are saying that maybe the card is okay. I disagree with that. I think the card should still at least be limited, so that way you're limited to the one copy of it, and that way, in case anything does happen on this next upcoming list, then we're not going to have to worry about any sort of fallback of going back to just the dreaded Dragoon format. However, it didn't have the same impact that it did in the OCG, so maybe it's okay. Let's go ahead and see where Dragoon ends up. Well, Dragoon getting banned. Okay, I think a lot of people would be okay with that, to be honest, but it definitely would be a hit to a lot of the lower tier decks, but I think that's a sacrifice that we can all make. Well, I was going to talk about Predaplant Verte Anaconda, but if Dragoon is banned according to the wheel, then I don't think that really matters as much because now Verte Anaconda is actually going to be just fine, but some people argue that instead of hitting Dragoon, you could hit Anaconda, since Anaconda is one of the enablers to actually make Dragoon so splashable in all these different decks. I think that's a pretty sound argument, so let's go ahead and spin and see where Anaconda would end up in case they don't end up hitting Dragoon. Anaconda to 2. I don't think that would accomplish anything in the slightest. Now, next up is everyone's favorite tuner killer, being Crystron Halqifibrax. Similar to Red Eye's Dark Dragoon, this is a bit of a weird card because a lot of people thought that with some of the most recent hits on the last ban list, that Crystron Halqifibrax was going to run rampant, but we're actually in a much slower control-oriented format, and yes, you still see Halqifibrax pop up from time to time. It's actually interesting that it's not, again, similar to Dragoon, this format-dominating threat that we expected it to be, and I think the banning of Link Cross probably help that to a degree. Similar to Dragoon, I believe that they should at least just limit Halqifibrax just in case whatever other hits they may do, then that way we kind of have a little bit of a safeguard in place to protect the format from getting out of hand, but obviously that's logical, so let's go ahead and see where the wheel is going to put Crystron Halqifibrax. Banning Crystron Halqifibrax. You know, if they did that, that would actually mean that a lot of the tuners that have made their way onto the ban list could come off, so a lot of the synchro players could actually appreciate that. I don't know, that might actually not be the worst, but I think Crystron Halki Fibrax is fine at 1. Banning it might be a little bit harsh, but man, this is one of the most strongest cards ever printed, so maybe it deserves to be banned. And since we're discussing incredibly powerful Link monsters, let's throw GUARDRAGON ELPY on the chopping block as well. This is a card that people have seemingly forgotten about since Dragon Link fell out of favor due to the last ban list hitting a lot of its key cards, and yes, Dragon Link is on a bit of a rise since people have reconfigured the deck and figured out how to play it now. The problem is, GUARDRAGON ELPY is just so inherently powerful. Dragon is one of the most supported types in the game and gets some of the most powerful cards ever printed and has received some of the most powerful cards ever printed, and the problem is every time Konami prints a dragon monster that's under 1,000 attack, it immediately can link into ELPY, or if they have a dragon that can be special summoned from the deck, then ELPY can immediately tutor it out, meaning that all these plays are going to get streamlined through ELPY, and it's just going to be the same linear playstyle that we've seen for the past several years, dating all the way back to what, like Danger Thunder Dragon? Like, ELPY is just absolutely insane. I would be okay with it being banned. Does it need to be at the moment? I'm not necessarily sure, but it's something that I think a lot of people would be okay with. So let's go ahead and spin for ELPY and see what happens. GUARDRAGON ELPY getting banned as well. Man, you know, this video started off pretty bad since True King of all Calamities was free to roam at 3, but just one after another, we're seeing some of the strongest cards on this list being banned left and right. I figured I'd go ahead and throw Firewall Dragon on the list since it will be coming back to the TCG. Now, don't worry if you haven't seen the news, it is going to be receiving an errata, so it's not going to be nearly as powerful as it once was, and it's going to be limited to, I believe, Cyberse decks only, so it's not going to do a whole lot, but it's still a card that they're probably going to put at 1, no one will play it, and then maybe they'll eventually put it to 3 because they'll realize that the card isn't that good. Now, there are some Cyberse focused decks that could take advantage of the new Firewall Dragon. Ignister's getting new support several sets from now. I think Salamangreat, I guess, could play because they're Cyberse based, but who knows? If Cyberse does receive support, Firewall Dragon's going to be there, and so let's see what happens. You know, Firewall Dragon coming back at 3, what's the worst that could happen? Heavy Metal Foes Electromite is next on my list. This is a card that I'm actually really shocked to see didn't come back on the most recent Forbidden and Limited list because we had Blazing Vortex come out and there's Metal Foes support in the archetype. We saw for the release of Phantom Rage, they brought back Rusty Bardiche, so why wouldn't they bring back Electromite for Metal Foes? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, and not to mention, we're receiving a brand new Pendulum-based archetype in Ancient Guardians that we're going to receive about mid-April to like early May, I believe. So what better than to bring back one of the strongest Pendulum-focused cards ever printed in Heavy Metal Foes Electromite? It'll help sell Blazing Vortex, it'll help people get ready for Ancient Guardians. It's a win-win. What could possibly go wrong? So let's go ahead and see where Heavy Metal Foes Electromite will end up. Heavy Metal Foes Electromite to 1. I think a lot of people would be happy with that. Would that be a mistake? Probably. The last time it was limited, it got banned shortly after. What's interesting about this is that Konami's been on this kick lately of rejuvenating older summoning mechanics. Think about how they gave Synchro so much support in the last few sets, as well as Xyz with cards like Zeus, and now Pendulum I feel like hasn't really had the same treatment, so maybe it's time for Pendulum to be put up to par with the other summoning mechanics, although to be fair, Pendulum summoning is inherently broken, and maybe that's not the best idea. I've also got Salamangreat Mirage Stalio on here. This card could come back to 1 and would do absolutely nothing. Salamangreat would still be like a rogue deck at best, and so if there's any type of card that would be in this sort of scenario that would help bolster another roguish strategy just to make the deck more playable, there's no reason we shouldn't have it back. So let's go ahead and spin the wheel and see where Mirage Stalio ends up. Well, Mirage Stalio is not going anywhere. And since we're on the topic of bringing back cards to support older archetypes, what about ORCUS HARP Horror? Remember when Mech Knight Girsu was supposed to reign in the age of ORCUS and it was going to be a 10-year dark lingering ORCUS fest? Yeah, that never happened, and so why not bring back HARP Horror to help support a deck like ORCUS that's otherwise been on a colossal nosedive otherwise to make it somewhat more playable? Maybe people will experiment with more now that Rusty Bardiche is legal with Phantom Knights. That was a really cool deck, and I'd be curious to see in this more control-oriented meta if something like that could thrive. So, ORCUS HARP Horror, let's see where it goes. ORCUS Harbor to 3. Holy shit, that would be insane. I think a lot of ORCUS people would be happy to see that. Called by the Grave is up next. This is such a weird card because this has moved all over the Forbidden and Limited list, right? Like, this card has been limited, it's been semi-limited, it's been re-limited, it's been unlimited. It just moves every single list, it seems. And so I feel like it would be a Konami thing to do to move Called by the Grave again, because it seems like it's tradition at this point. I'm not really sure what the answer is here. I think putting this card to 3 is probably the best solution. It's a super generic, super flexible card, helps deal with hand traps, helps deal with a lot of graveyard stuff. And think about the format we're in. There's a lot of graveyard recursion going on, so Called by the Grave could actually be a very significant card in that war, and let's see what happens. Called by the Grave getting banned. Okay, to be fair, I don't think Called by the Grave's been banned yet, so if there was a time to make it happen, I guess Called by the Grave could be one of the few cards to say it's been banned, limited, semi'd, and unlimited. And as per tradition, at the end of every episode of Banlist Roulette, we like to conclude on the most divisive, most polarizing Yu-Gi-Oh card ever printed, Max C. Some people feel like Max C can come back to 3. Those people should be flung out of a high-speed catapult straight into a brick wall, but nonetheless, Max C is a card that can never return. Some people make the argument saying, well, why can't the card go to 1 or to 2? And to that I say, that just makes no sense and makes it even more sacky than it already is, because if you played it 3, your opponent can also play it at 3, so you at least both have a consistent chance of always drawing it and you can possibly build around it. Or if it's at 0, like it is now, then you never have to worry about the card at all, and that is how it should be. This card should have never been printed. This was a mistake, and in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, this card serves no purpose. So we're gonna see what happens, and every time I hope that this stays banned, and usually this is like the barometer for how the format's gonna shape up. Let's hope for the best, ladies and gentlemen. Cue the music. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So guys, that's going to wrap it up for another episode of Banlist Roulette. If you guys enjoyed it, be sure to let me know down in the comments and let me know what you think is going to happen on the upcoming March Forbidden and Limited list. Tomorrow we'll go ahead and go over the more serious, more analytical Banlist prediction that I know you guys are all waiting for. And who knows? I'm really excited to see what the new format brings, even though the format's in a relatively good place, I would say. But be sure to let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Thank you all so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and if you found this video entertaining, consider supporting me on Patreon for exclusive early one-day access to both the Yu-Gi-Oh Progression series and the history of Yu-Gi-Oh. Thank you all so much for watching again, and we will see you next time.